السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق أجمعين، سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تمش في الأرض مرحا إنك لن تخرق الأرض ولن تبلغ الجبال طولا. God states in the Holy Quran in chapter 17, verse 37, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and do not walk upon the earth exultantly. Indeed, you will never tear the earth apart, nor will you reach the mountains in height. Amanna billah, sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Many of us have probably witnessed people who seem to live their lives with the belief that they are somehow special, or that they are better than others. And sometimes, and we see this all the time, sometimes this implicit belief even translates to certain odd behaviors. You find that some people engage in behaviors in which it's as though they believe that they are exempt from following common rules or social norms. They may act in a way where, for instance, they believe that they're exempt from following traffic rules or safety protocols, right? They believe that somehow they're special, and so, texting and driving is prohibited for everyone except themselves. It's fine for me to text and drive, but not for everyone else. It's fine for me to speed, for instance, or not to stop at the stop sign. It's fine. I'm exempt. I'm above the law. This law does not pertain to me, right? Or some, you find that they're chronically late. They believe that only their time is valuable, only their own time is important, and not that of others, and so they're always late to meetings. They're always late to gatherings. We find this is common, right? We have a word for it. We call it Muslim Standard Time, where we assume that our time is more valuable than the time of others. We find that sometimes some people, they take up more space than is necessary, right? You get on the bus or the train or what have you, and you find that the person is sitting and they've put their bag, right? Or they're just taking up 2 seats, for instance. Or they're taking up 2 parking spots. They've parked right in the middle, right? They believe that, their car is more valuable than everyone else's car, and so they take up more space. We find, for instance, some people who don't follow hygiene norms. We've all seen it, right? You're in a restroom, in a public place, in a restaurant, public place, and someone comes out of the restroom and they decide they don't wash their hands. They just exit. It's kind of gross, but we've all seen it happen, right? That those hygiene norms, for instance, they ignore them, right? Or some people, for instance, they don't respect personal boundaries. They believe that, their need to connect with others, let's put it that way, their need to connect with others, their need to understand, is more valuable than people's personal space, right? Their personal space. And so they might, be very comfortable with ignoring people's personal space. They touch people, right? Or they pry into people's personal lives. They're exempt. They believe they're special. And we find that this behavior, if we really dig deep down, some of it might be due to ignorance. One is not educated about certain norms or requirements. But in many cases, if we dig deep down, we find that it's often this implicit belief that I am somehow special, that I am somehow superior to others. Now, if you were to ask people who believe that they are exempt from following some of these common rules and norms, if you ask them, are you better than everyone else? Are you at the center of the universe? They'll probably get embarrassed and say, no, of course not. Of course I'm not special. Of course I'm not at the center of the universe. But sometimes, through these actions, we find that we carry this implicit belief, even if we do not admit it. If someone asks me, am I special? Are you special? Are you better than others? I probably will say no. But sometimes through our actions, it's as though we carry this implicit belief. And this is why when we come to our teachings, we find that our teachings, they really push us. They encourage us to develop humility in our lives, to live our lives with humility. And this is the essence of humility. What is the essence? The essence of humility is the death of the secret conviction that we may have that I am somehow special, that I am at the center of this universe, that everything revolves around my needs and my wants, that I am more important than others. It's the death. Humility is the death of the secret conviction. It reminds us that it doesn't matter how great you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter where you are in the socio-economic spectrum, that you're not better than others. Right? This is what humility does. If you were to go online now and to Google the most powerful person on earth, you want to find out who is the most powerful person on earth. If you Google this, if you search, you'll probably get various results. You'll get results that will tell you that, certain heads of state, right? The president or the prime minister of such and such country is the most powerful man on earth, and usually it's a man. Or the CEO of this company, or this business person, right? So on and so forth. You'll get names, politicians, heads of state, celebrities, business people, as being the most powerful person on earth. They're given this title. Somehow they're special, they're unique, right? Because they're the most powerful person on earth. But what does it mean to be the most powerful person on earth in the context of the rest of creation? What does it mean to be the most powerful person on earth in the context of the galaxies around us? If you were just to take our own galaxy as an example, the Milky Way, not the chocolate, the actual galaxy, the Milky Way, right? How big is the Milky Way, our galaxy? How big? It's mind-boggling how big. 100,000.
100,000 times bigger than what light year?
You're on the right track, right? If you were to travel the distance from one side, one end of the Milky Way to the other, it would take 100,000 light years. 100,000 light years. What is a light year? What's a light year? It takes, yes, you have your hand up. Go ahead, please. Tell me. Excellent.
A light year is years converted into different years for space because of how big it is?
Yes, it's the standard by how we judge measurement in space, but specifically, excellent. Specifically, when we say a light year, we're talking about the speed of light, not regular speed, like sitting on the freeway going 50 miles an hour, right? But specifically the speed of light. Light travels much, much faster than the ordinary speed that we measure. Light travels at the speed of approximately 186,000 miles per second. Huh? 330,000 miles or kilometers? Kilometers, yeah. Yes. Okay. So, for instance, to kind of figure out what that means, these are big numbers, right? I was trying to figure out, when I was preparing yesterday, I was searching online just to try to figure out, and I came across this really good video from NASA. Tells you, I posted it on my social media too. Go and look at the video because it explains visually, because sometimes, we throw out these numbers, thousands of years, millions of miles, billions of miles, but to visualize it is something else, right? If you were to take the sun, right? The sun is approximately 93 million miles away from the earth. 93 million miles. Now, for light to travel from the sun to earth, how long does it take for light to travel from the sun to earth? It takes about 8 minutes and 20 seconds. So when you look at the sun, the light that you're seeing is not in real time. It's not live, right? There's an 8-minute and 20-second delay, essentially, for that light to travel from the sun all the way to earth, because the sun is 93 million miles away. To travel from one side, the sun is not in the middle of the Milky Way, right? If you were to travel from one side, light, for it to travel from one side of the Milky Way all the way to the other side, it would take 100,000 light years. And by the way, our galaxy, compared to some adjacent neighboring galaxies, is one of the smaller galaxies. It's one of the smaller galaxies. It's truly mind-boggling. So, to say that I am the most powerful person on earth, what does that mean in the context of the other creations? It reminds us how minuscule, how microscopic we are. And this is what the Quran tries to remind us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us signs, He gives us analogies. God says, وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. Do not walk on the face of this earth exultantly, with pride, with arrogance. إِنَّكَ لَن تَخْرِقَ الْأَرْضِ. No matter how exultant you are, you will never tear the earth apart. Walk on the earth with pride, right? And stomp your feet as much as you want. Stand up and start jumping up and down as much as you want. Are you going to be able to tear the earth apart? وَلَن تَبْلُغَ الْجِبَالَ طُولًا. No matter how high you raise your head, you'll never reach the height of the mountains. The Quran is, we have to understand this in the context of 7th century Arabia. God is speaking to the people at the time, and to later generations, of course, to us even today. But at that time, they were not aware. Yes, they would see stars and planets, but they were not aware, they didn't have that scientific knowledge that we have now of the vastness of the universe. And, being able to see and measure how vast the Milky Way is and other galaxies are, and so on and so forth. So they would see what? They would see mountains. What they could see in front of them, mountain. God says, don't walk with pride and arrogance on the earth, because no matter how arrogant and proud you are and how high you raise your head and chin, you'll never reach the height of the mountains. There are other creations that are far greater than you. And so, what the Quran does and our teachings try to do is they try to encourage authority. There should be no place for me to think that I'm special, somehow special, or better than others around me. And we know that it's important for us to develop humility, because humility is what grounds our faith and our practice. This is why we have so many reports from the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, and the Ahlul Bayt, that tell us that humility is the key to faith. To be humble. مَنْ تَوَاضَعَ لِلَّهِ رَفَعَهُ. The hadith says, the one who is humble before God, God will raise him or her. That's the key. You want God to raise you? Be humble before God. You want God to accept your prayers and your acts of devotion? Be humble. You want God to make you favorable? Be humble. There are many spiritual advantages and benefits to being humble. The hadith says that the one who has even the amount of a mustard seed, the weight of an atom or a mustard seed, of arrogance in their heart, they are banned, prohibited from entering paradise. There's no place for arrogance in paradise. You know, sometimes you go out and you see some restaurants or shops, they tell you no shirts, no shoes, no service. Right? It's a requirement. If you want to enter, again, it goes back to this idea of certain norms. There's a certain dress code that's expected that we uphold, right? If you don't uphold this dress code, sorry, we cannot serve you. You're not allowed to enter. God says there are certain norms for those who want to enter the paradise. One of them is that you do not exhibit arrogance. If you have arrogance, that's it. You're barred. You're banned from paradise. So there are many spiritual benefits to developing humility and humbleness in our lives. But there are also other benefits, personal benefits, and social benefits in this life. Like what? I want to give you a few examples tonight, inshallah, in the time that we have left. One is that working on developing humility in our lives allows us greater self-awareness. It allows us to develop an honest assessment of ourselves. And when we develop an honest assessment of ourselves, we begin to realize our strengths and our limitations and weaknesses. And this opens the door for personal growth. How? Because if we are able to understand our weaknesses, to realize that I have limitations, I have some weaknesses, right? This allows me to do what? To identify these weaknesses and to address them, to address those areas of that require improvement. I can build myself. I have greater self-awareness. And I avoid living life with misguided notions of myself. They say that there was a young, up-and-coming preacher. And he had spent a lot of time with his mentor who was teaching him how to speak publicly, how to preach to the community and so on. And he sent him off to several places, small venues, where he would practice essentially preaching before people. And every time he would give a lecture or a presentation, people would come to him, they would thank him, they would tell him, "This is terrific. What an excellent speech. You did so well. This was so enlightening." And so he started to get better and better. And that kind of got to his head, right? He started to see that people were noticing him. Oh, well, maybe I am a really good speaker. Maybe I am a really good preacher. And so it started to get to his head until he was invited one day to speak at a big church. There was a large gathering. And so the days leading up to his lecture, he was feeling very proud. He was feeling very, very confident, right? And so he walks in, and it's time for him to go up. The MC announces him, he introduces him, and he goes up and he's, very confident, going up the stage. He's just full of joy and happiness, very confident. So he goes up and he stands in front of the pulpit and he's about to speak. Suddenly, he's completely mute. He can't say a word. He's forgotten everything that he wants to say. He sees the large crowd in front of him and he's paralyzed. And this continues for a few moments until he puts his head down, doesn't know what to do, and he just walks off stage. He gets off the stage and he just walks down with his head down in embarrassment. He goes and he sits down. After this ordeal, he goes to his mentor and he says, "Help me. I don't know what happened to me today. I was doing so well. I was giving great speeches." His mentor told him, "You know what, son? If you had gone up to the pulpit in the manner that you came down from the pulpit with your head down in humility, you would have come down from the pulpit in the way that you went up to the pulpit." Be humble. Sometimes, if I have misguided notions of myself, if I'm not fully aware of my strengths and my weaknesses, what ends up happening? I start to live my life in illusions sometimes. It's very much like a little child. Those of you who have little children, say around age, you may remember, maybe around the age of 3, 4, 5, when a child is very, very active, right? And you want to take this child, you want to go out. You want to go out to, anywhere, publicly. And you take the child's stroller. And the child says, "No, I don't want to sit in the stroller. I want to walk." Right? "I want to walk." And you as the parent know that your child is small. They're going to get tired. They're going to want to sit down. But they insist, "No, I can do it. Don't bring my stroller down from the car." They get upset sometimes, right? Put it back in the car, right? Don't even bring it down. Because the child at that age is living with this misguided notion of its capability. He or she thinks that they can walk for miles on end without getting tired, without realizing that they're going to get tired after 30 seconds. And they're going to, go up to their parents and they want their parents to carry them, right? If we're not aware of our limitations, our weaknesses, our deficiencies, then that's how we operate in life. But when we develop humility and humbleness, and we are honest with ourselves, I know these are my strengths, and these are my weaknesses, then I open up the floor and the door to what? To self-improvement. I know what works and what doesn't work, and I know how to build and how to improve that which needs improvement. So this is number one. Another benefit of maintaining humility is that we can engage in improved decision making. When I'm open to reality, when I approach decision making with greater perspective and wisdom, and I have a willingness to seek out and to examine and to consider alternative viewpoints, this helps me do what? I'm less likely to make decisions and to be guided by some of my own prejudices and biases. We all have biases, right? No one is absolutely above having, even if they're implicit prejudices or biases, right? But if I'm always thinking that I'm right, that I'm the best decision maker ever, that all of my deals and all of my decisions are excellent and they're always great, what happens? I'm operating under some of my own biases and I can make mistakes. But if I'm humble enough to consider other viewpoints, to realize, hey, there are other people who are smart, they have ideas, I can learn from them, right? This helps me in making better informed decisions. And this is what the Quran tells us. The Quran even tells the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, and consult them in matters. This is the Prophet. The Prophet had access to revelation. He didn't need to consult anyone. He could say, my Lord. He consults God. He says, my Lord, tell me what to do. Tell me what the best decision is. And God reveals to the Prophet. But the Quran here, God reminds the Prophet that even you, Ya Rasulullah, consult others, speak to them, consider viewpoints. And the Prophet, this is how he lived his life. We have many instances in which the Prophet would consult those around him. In the famous instant of the battle of Khandaq, the trench, he gathers his companions and he asks them, he says, what do we do? And Salman al-Farisi, he proposes to the Prophet, he says, Ya Rasulullah, let's build a trench. And the Prophet considers that viewpoint and he takes it. The Prophet used to consult others. And in this way, when we are humble enough to consider other viewpoints and not just to think that I am the best decision maker, it's just about me and my understanding and my intellect, then we make better decisions. We don't end up falling into the trap of being guided only by our own biases. Developing humility also allows us to increase our resilience in life, brothers and sisters. Because if we have a more realistic view of ourselves and others and of the world, it helps us to better cope with challenges and setbacks. And especially when it comes to the failures that we experience in life. And everyone experiences failures. And this is something important that, especially as parents, especially as family members, as community members, we need to be able to instill in our children and in our youth and in one another the idea that failure is a natural part of life. Of course, parents always want their children to succeed. We want our children to get the best grades. We want our children to get accepted into the best schools. We want our children to get the best jobs. We want this for ourselves as well. We always want success. And we push one another towards success. But the reality of the matter is that sometimes we fail in life. Sometimes you don't do as well as you wanted on that exam. Sometimes you don't get that job. Sometimes you don't get into that school that you wanted. Sometimes you don't marry the person that you wanted to marry. Sometimes your relationship isn't as great as it should be. There are failures. There are setbacks. There are challenges. And if we assume that life is always about material success and apparent success, I have to succeed at all costs and I have to win at all costs, then when I do, not if, but when I do fail, when I do experience setbacks, I have challenges with coping. I fall into what? I fall into a sense of depression. Oh, I failed. That means there's something wrong with me. Right? I begin to be skeptical about others. I begin to be pessimistic about life because I assume that life is all about success, success, success. But if I'm humble enough and I have a more realistic view of life, of myself, my strengths, my weaknesses, my limitations, and of the world, of the reality of the world, this helps me to cope with the setbacks and the failures and the difficulties that I experience. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, he reminds us of this reality. He says, الدهر يومان يوم لك ويوم عليك. Very beautiful. He says, life consists of 2 days. One day is for you and the other day is against you. It's not all for you. It's not all rosy. Every single day is success and happiness and progress. No. Some days are days of quote-unquote fortune and goodness, and other days are days of challenges. And the Quran says, لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. God says, remember that neither when you face challenges and difficulties, neither should you fall into despair. Oh, my life is over. There's nothing I can do. That's it. This is the worst thing that can ever happen to me. There is no solution. There's no way forward. Don't fall into that despair, God says. Nor should you be overly joyous in the good things of life. Oh, this is the best thing that happened to me. Right? Sometimes we feel that way. You get a job, you say, oh, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Khalas, I'm set for life. right? You marry so-and-so, oh, that's it, they're my soulmate. This is my dream, I don't need anything else. God says, neither should you despair over the challenges and the difficulties and your setbacks, nor should you be overly joyous and overly reliant on those good days and those good experiences that you have. When we develop humility, this helps us to cope, especially when it comes to our setbacks and failures. And this essentially, it allows us to reduce the stress and the anxiety that we face and that we experience. Because you're no longer trying to prove yourself. If you have this misguided notion that you are somehow superior, you're better, and you always have to prove this, superiority to others, you always have to win, then what ends up happening? You're always in this state of anxiety and stress. I always have to prove myself to others. But when we develop humility, you're able to reduce that stress. I don't have to compare myself to others. I don't have to prove myself to others. And it takes away a whole burden of stress and anxiety that we have. And thus we are less likely to feel threatened by others. We're less likely to feel defensive. If someone comes and talks to me and they give me advice, some people, they feel defensive, right? Because they assume that they always have to succeed. They have to please everyone. So if someone comes and tells me, hey, listen, and they're telling me sincerely, out of sincere love and concern, they say, hey, listen, maybe you want to think about how you approach this issue. They're giving me constructive criticism and feedback, right? Some people, they feel defensive. Oh, don't tell me what to do. Who are you to tell me what to do? I'm doing just fine, right? But if we have that humility, then I don't feel defensive anymore. I'm open to people coming and providing me with guidance and counseling and advice and improving myself. And finally, it helps me even in my social relationships. It helps me develop empathy and compassion towards others. Because if I develop this sense of humility, that I'm not better than others, that other people are also valuable, that everyone around me has value and dignity and honor, then this opens up the door for me to realize and to understand that other people also have experiences and challenges. It's not just me who has challenges and difficulties, other people as well. And so I can develop this sense of empathy, compassion towards others, helping others, assisting others no longer becomes a burden. No longer becomes a burden. No longer becomes something that I want to ignore. Because I begin to realize this person needs help. This person has challenges. They have difficulties just like me. What's the worst thing that someone can do to you during the month of Ramadan? Is to come and to disturb you at the time of iftar, no? It's the worst thing that they can do. You've been fasting all day. You're hungry, you're thirsty, it's time for you. You've been in the kitchen for hours preparing for this very moment. Right? You know exactly the hour and the minute and the second of iftar time. And the worst thing someone can come and do is to call you at the time of iftar. If someone calls you at the time of iftar, what do? Oh, they couldn't choose any other time in 24 hours. They chose right now to call me. Or imagine if someone comes and knocks on your door at the time of iftar. Not even Eid night. Eid night is, more difficult. But any night during the month of Ramadan, they come and they knock on your door at the time of iftar. It's the worst thing someone can do to you, right? Because what? Because I'm hungry. I've been fasting all day. I need to break my fast now. I can't attend to others. It doesn't matter what their problem is, what their issue is. But the Quran gives us another example. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. There were people who are our role models. They don't belong to another tradition, another religious tradition. They are our role models. The Quran says there were people, the family of the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, for 3 days. They're fasting. It's the time of iftar, the time for them to break their fast. 3 consecutive days, someone comes and knocks on the door and says, I'm in need. You are the family of kindness and generosity. I'm hungry. Look at the humility, the greatness. This is why they are great, because of their humility. They didn't say, oh, we're hungry and we're thirsty. Now's not the time. Come back in half an hour. Come back in an hour. Now's not the time. I have my own needs that I need to take care of. They have empathy. Oh, this person is in need. They're also hungry. They're also in need. They're also sad. They have some sort of need. And this does what? It triggers that empathy and that compassion. So no longer are you a priority. No longer are you the center of the universe. Now you know that other people also have honor and they have needs and they have value. And so you attend to those needs of others. It allows us to be more compassionate. It allows us to avoid being overly critical of others. Always criticizing others. Just looking for people who make mistakes so I can tell them, hey, you're wrong. You made a mistake. Sometimes you find this in life. Some people, they're overly critical. Overly critical. They're always looking, not constructive criticism. Constructive criticism is good, but destructive criticism. They just always want to point out people's flaws and tell them that they're wrong, and they want to correct them. There's a beautiful hadith. Khidr, alayhi salam, he tells Prophet Musa. Khidr gives advice to Prophet Musa. He says to him, Yabna Imran, O son of Imran. This was Musa ibn Imran. Yabna Imran, la tu'ayyiranna ahadan bi khati'ah. O son of Imran, do not condemn others for any mistakes that they make. Meaning, don't be overly critical. You made a mistake, khalas, you're going to hell, straight to hell. There's no solution for you. Right? Don't be overcritical. Don't condemn others for their mistakes. And then he says, وَابْكِ عَلَى خَطِيئَتِكَ. Instead, you should weep over your own faults. Don't go around trying to find the faults of others, point them out. Instead of doing this, be humble and weep and cry over your own faults and mistakes. Try to fix them. Try to correct them. This is what humility is. So humility, developing humility, humbleness, living with humility is not just beneficial for us in the hereafter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us rewards and paradise and so on. It's even beneficial for us in this life. It helps us in our personal growth and personal development. When I'm making decisions, when I'm working, when it comes to my relationships with family, with friends, with strangers, with others, it helps build me into someone who is great. And that's the key. Humility, living with humility, is the key to making us great in the eyes of God and in the eyes of others. And the month of Ramadan is an opportune time for us to develop humility, brothers and sisters. It's a great time. Because when we fast, when we are hungry, when we are thirsty, we remember how delicate we are. What does hunger and thirst do to us? We don't have our caffeine. What does it do to us? Some of us, like myself, it destroys us. You can't operate. You can't function. For the first few days, you're like a zombie. You can't even think right. Right? We're so delicate. I have no energy. I can't get up. I can't do this. I can't do that. It reminds us of our limitations and our weaknesses. It helps us develop the sense of humility. It also helps us remember that there are others around us as well. We need one another. It reminds us that there are others who are also in need. I should be humble. I should not take things that God has given me for granted. I should reach out to others. I should help others. I should assist others. All of this is helpful for me in developing this sense of humility and living my life with humility. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to instill in our hearts and minds the ability to be humble, to be truly humble in the way that we interact with ourselves and with others around us. اللهم اغفر ذنوب المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك قاضي الحاجات إنك على كل شيء قدير. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نهدي جميعا ثواب سورة الفاتحة مع الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد.